Welcome to Beneath the Maze. I'm your host, BP Murray, and I've got an absolute banger for you today. We left off last time with the question, why would corrupt leaders of society want its people to be confused? So let's jump right in. Let's go 20 feet beneath the maze for episode 2, The Lost. Why would corrupt leaders invite confusion to their people? Or to stay on theme, who erected these walls in the maze? And why? It only makes life more difficult to navigate and understand. There is one major element that we must understand about people, about ourselves, to answer the question. And it's the feeling of purpose. The feeling of purpose among individuals is everything. It's so important to understanding how society works. When a person does not feel purposeful, they start to feel useless. When you do not feel like you belong, or do not feel like you have worth in society, you, the individual, begin to feel lost, even depressed. When you start to think to yourself, do I matter? Does anyone care about me? When you have these thoughts and they start to wear on you, affect you, you are in a very dark place in life, aren't you? Many of us have been there at one point or another, this place of darkness and confusion. When I refer to being in the maze during this episode, this is what I mean: a state of confusion, darkness, when you feel a lack of purpose in life. No one wants to be in the maze. A strong feeling of purpose gives one the ability to pull themselves out of the maze. A strong feeling of purpose also helps prevent you from falling into the maze to begin with. Thus, to avoid depression and confusion, our feeling of purpose must be explored. So, where does the feeling of purpose come from? What gives you a feeling of purpose? There are a lot, but let's pinpoint the 4 main elements that create your feeling of purpose, or as I like to call them, the 4 pillars of purpose. So what's one of them? 1, a job. We already talked about production being essential to joy at the society level. When you have something productive to do, you feel purposeful. It's interesting when you think about retirement. A lot of people can't do it well. They can't just relax for years. It's because they start to lose a feeling of purpose. So a lot of people end up going back to work. Okay, so a job gives you purpose. That's easy. What else? How about family? Family is another pillar of purpose. Let's focus on kids in a family for a minute. It's no secret that when a child grows up without a mother or father, many of them struggle in life. What is the core reason why? It's because they have one less avenue of purpose in their life, one less rock that will always love and care for them. Which means a child that has 2 parents, when that kid goes to the dark place, they can say to themselves, I do matter. My mom and dad love me. 2 sources of purpose rather than 1. Friends give you purpose. Brothers and sisters give you purpose. Family is the strongest pillar of purpose. According to a 2017 Pew Research survey, 70% of people listed family as their number 1 feeling of purpose. The 3rd pillar of purpose is your voice, your ability to be heard in society, your opinion, your vote. Imagine you are at a table voicing your opinion on an issue, and no one even makes eye contact with you or listens to a word you say. This would bring one to ask, do I matter? Wouldn't it? Now imagine the opposite scenario. Everyone is making eye contact, engaging with your ideas and comments, agreeing and disagreeing. You have a place in this scenario. You feel part of it, part of something. Your voice gives you purpose. The last major element that gives people purpose is religion. Now, whether you are religious or not, stick with me here. Someone who is religious believes in a higher power, right? So when that person goes to the dark place, the maze, they turn to God or a higher power and find purpose from the higher power that they believe in, which helps pull them out of the maze. So to sum up, there are 4 major elements that contribute to your feeling of purpose. Family, or you could even say people, because it's family, friends, kids. Right, so that's the first pillar. Your job is the second pillar. Your voice is the third pillar. Your ability to be heard in society, your opinion, your vote. And religion is the number 4. So those are the 4 pillars of purpose. Each pillar contributes to one's feeling of purpose. A corrupt leader is merely a jester in the maze. And when I say jester moving forward, that's what I mean. A corrupt leader in society. Now let's talk about the maze. The dark place of confusion and lacking a feeling of purpose. If you do not have the ability to pull yourself out of the maze, or lack the people, family, friends, if you lack the 4 elements of purpose, then what happens? Well, you're more likely to stay confused. You keep the feeling of being lost, or it gets worse, right? The 4 elements we discussed all pull you out of the maze and presumably into a better place, or they prevent you from sinking to begin with. Now, what or who might take you from the maze and into a worse situation? You see, we all know that when a person is in a dark and confused state, they are very vulnerable. So when someone comes along with bad intentions, the vulnerable are more prone to deception. One who is lost is more easily guided. Most importantly, people who are down, people who think life sucks, are more likely to believe that changes are needed in society. People who have been beaten down in society are more likely to believe that something is wrong with society. This is the key. If a corrupt leader's platform is radical change, then they need more people who believe radical changes are needed. I'm going to say that again. If a corrupt leader's platform is radical change, then they need more people who believe radical change is needed. So how do they manufacture support for their radical changes? Well, you need more people who think something is wrong with society. Corrupt leaders pull the feeling of purpose away from people slowly and strategically so as not to be noticed, thereby sinking people to a place where they are more susceptible to messages of change. You are not likely to support change if life is good, and you certainly aren't going to support radical changes if life is good. And if you've ever wondered why the message of change constantly evolves, this is why. Because the vulnerable are drawn to messages of change. Is this happening in America? If the corrupt leaders are prying and pulling purpose away from individuals in society, then there would be evidence to support that theory, right? So let's look at the 4 pillars of purpose we discussed earlier and see if corrupt leaders are pushing policies that tear down those elements. Number 1, your job. What leaders want to take your jobs away, and how? Are there any policies that maybe sound good in theory but end up hurting the number of jobs available? How about we need $15 an hour minimum wage? Does that sound familiar? According to the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, in February 2021, a rise in the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour would lead to the loss of 1.4 million jobs by 2025. You would think that leaders who know a $15 an hour minimum wage would destroy over 1 million jobs. You'd think those leaders wouldn't push the policy. But you see, it's a win-win for corrupt leaders. It sounds good in theory, so people support the idea in real time. Then, when the policy doesn't work in the long run, less jobs exist, and it takes purpose away from people, causing them to think something is wrong with society, and thus believing that radical changes are needed. When the policy fails, the jester simply moves the cheese from one side of the maze to the other, and all their supporters run frantically through the labyrinth. In other words, when the policy fails, the corrupt leader simply changes the game, focuses on another element of purpose to dismantle, and sends their followers to its gate. It's all a game. Now you are starting to see the strings that control the system. Your feeling of purpose is what they are after. The chess game going on beneath the maze is a match between the jester and society's feeling of purpose. The maze is right where they want you. Sad, confused, angry, in a state of thinking that something is wrong with society. You are not even going to consider changes to society if life is great. And you certainly won't listen to radical changes if life is great. Ergo de facto, remove purpose, make life worse, and radical changes fly off the shelf. For the jester, it's not about what works. It's about what sells. And it's about creating more buyers. That's the game. Your feeling of purpose is where the game begins. Your feeling of purpose is why the maze exists. It's why the jester welcomes confusion in society. Don't believe me? Need more evidence that corrupt leaders attack your feeling of purpose? Fine. I can do this all day. What other policies hurt jobs in America? What else hinders the number of people working? Here is a perplexing question for you. In a world where everything is free, who works? You go to the coffee shop, who's making coffee? Why would they work if everything's free? I'll tell you this, if everything's free, I'm going on vacation for 6 months. I'm going to the Bahamas. Unfortunately, I think everyone else would have a similar idea. So I'm not sure who would be flying the plane to Bahamas. As goods and services become free in society, less and less people are inclined to work. We talked about the circle of success in episode 1. Your wants and needs are what motivate you to produce. Well, what happens when the jester provides all the needs in society? Less people produce. Less people work. How many essentials does the corrupt leader want to make free today? How often do we hear this? Free school, free healthcare, free college, free food, free phones, free birth control. free childcare, free money, free, free, free. This is massive. Free is such an easy sell, and with each stroke of the pen, less and less people are inclined to work. Thus, the jester pushes for everything to be free, so that purpose loses another piece on the chessboard. Is there anything else that hurts jobs? Anything big? What about drugs and illegal immigration? Policies at the southern border? Why would the jester want to stop drugs and illegal immigration? No. The jester welcomes harmful drugs into society. Illegal drugs will bring more people down, create more chaos and confusion. Drugs bring more people into the maze and keep them there longer. Illegal immigration? That will take jobs away from the citizens of society. So the jester says, I got an idea. Leave the border open under the guise of compassion and let the chips fall where they may, knowing exactly where the chips will fall. More drugs, more illegal immigrants, less jobs for citizens, and more citizens in the maze. Still don't believe corrupt leaders are after your feeling of purpose? We haven't discussed a second pillar of purpose, the strongest of them all, family. According to the Pew Research survey conducted in 2017, family is the #1 source of purpose. Zoom into family a little closer, and children is #1. Children give individuals the strongest feeling of purpose. Do the same corrupt leaders that seek to pry jobs away from society also seek to prevent you from having kids? That would surely be a coincidence. How about abortion? Did you ever wonder why corrupt leaders wouldn't just let abortion go after the Dobbs decision? Why not just let the states make the laws around abortion? Seems fair to just let state law dictate, right? Why not just let that go? This is why. Because children give people the strongest feeling of purpose. Reducing abortion hinders the jester's long-term goal of removing purpose from society. Children give you a very strong feeling of purpose. Thus, even birth control is a win for the jester. Now, quick disclaimer. I'm not going to discuss the morality of each of these issues or direction that is pushed by corrupt leaders. I'm highlighting how each of them impact the family, how each direction or policy impacts family, the strongest pillar of purpose. So here we go. Gay marriage. If you are gay, you are 32% less likely to have kids, according to a 2020 Census Bureau. Obviously, some couples adopt, but there you have it. Less people having kids, less purpose. So the jester is inclined not simply to allow gay marriage, but to also promote homosexuality. What about the transgender movement? Same story. The jester doesn't just allow it. They promote and welcome it. And with the jester promoting gender transitions, they will also inject a high dose of confusion into the individual, casting them deeper into the maze. As you may well know, transgender individuals have the highest suicide rates worldwide. Hence, corrupt leaders inject the transgender ideology heavily into society, as it is the method by which its people will become the most trapped in the maze. How else does the jester lay siege to the family pillar? Marriage? The jester seeks to keep marriage rates low and divorce rates high. So strange that this is also a theme in America as of late. Another coincidence? Or is this by design? What keeps marriage rates low and divorce rates high? What about porn? The porn industry. According to a study by Science.org, marriages with at least one person watching porn are 2 to 3 times more likely to get divorced than couples where neither watch porn. The jester likes porn. They call it art. They call it women's rights, and let it run free. Virtually unchecked, extremely easy to access and share. They persuade women who haven't even graduated high school to participate. You think a woman as young as 18 participating in porn is good for their mental health? Into the maze they go. How about the third pillar of purpose, your voice? Do the same corrupt leaders who've attacked the first 2 pillars also lay siege to your freedom of speech? Do they carefully and systematically censor the thoughts and opinions of the opposition? How about big tech? How about the Twitter files that was just released? How about cancel culture? The jester does not want you to have a voice. Another coincidence. Do you believe me yet? Let's turn to the last pillar, religion. Does the jester like religion? Do the same leaders who push the policies we reviewed thus far, do these leaders invite religion or demonize and attack religion? They do not like religion, do they? Another coincidence. If you still do not believe me, if you are still not convinced after reviewing the 4 pillars of purpose, I'll make one more point. During the pandemic in America, depression skyrocketed. Why was this the case? It's simple. Because of the lockdowns. People lost the feeling of purpose. Many were not working. They were not able to visit their family and friends. They were not able to attend church. Ironically, 3 of the 4 pillars there. Which leaders were pro-lockdown? Which state leaders kept the lockdowns in place longer? Those lockdowns were a portal to the maze. An all-inclusive, one-way cruise to the center of the labyrinth. Oh yeah, one more thing. At what point in your life would you say you were more lost or confused? When you were younger, maybe? Like in your teens or early 20s? Who do younger people typically vote for? The goal of the corrupt leader is to prevent the individual from having a feeling of purpose. The goal is to send the individual to the maze and keep people there until they encounter the jester at the fork, who will ultimately court the vulnerable to the wheel. Wheel? What wheel, Murray? You haven't talked about this wheel yet. Removing purpose is phase 1. Phase 2 is courting the lost to support the jester. To see this, we must go 30 feet beneath the maze. How does a corrupt leader persuade the vulnerable to become a pawn on their chessboard? Slowly and systematically. We will pick up here next week for episode 3, The Jester's Wheel. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe and share this podcast if you like the content. I have so much more to show you.